$64 million. That is what it cost Iran on a single night to force Israel to spend $258 million defending itself. $4 spent in defense for every $1 spent in offense. That ratio is not a footnote, it is the entire story. Over 19 days, Israel has burned through nearly $2 billion in defensive munitions. The Arrow Interceptor system, Israel's highest tier shield against ballistic missiles, may now hold fewer than 200 rounds. Boeing produces 60 to 80 Arrow interceptors per year. Israel consumes that annual output in roughly a week. The replacement timeline is 9 months minimum. The question is not whether Israel's military is capable. It clearly is. The question is whether any military force operating under these economic conditions can sustain this kind of defensive warfare indefinitely. The mathematics suggest the answer is no. To understand why this moment matters, it helps to understand what kind of analysis has historically gotten these questions right. Ray McGovern spent 27 years as a CIA analyst. He prepared the president's daily brief for multiple administrations. He chaired the National Intelligence Estimates. He has spent the decades since applying the same cold, evidence-based scrutiny to American and allied policy that intelligence work demands. McGovern has long argued that military power divorced from economic sustainability is not strategy, it is performance. And performance eventually meets reality. That is the lens through which this analysis proceeds. The current exchange between Iran and Israel is, in McGovern's broader analytical tradition, a test of whether technological superiority can survive economic attrition. The historical record on that question is not encouraging for the defender. McGovern's analytical tradition begins with a simple discipline: follow the numbers before you follow the narrative. Each Arrow 3 interceptor carries an estimated unit cost of between $2 and $3 million. Iran's ballistic missiles cost somewhere between $300,000 and $1 million per unit. The exchange ratio, by conservative estimates, favors the attacker by a factor of 3 to 1, by less conservative estimates, 5 or 6 to 1. This is not a new strategic problem. What is new is the scale at which it is playing out in real time, with alliance commitments and political pressures compressing decision cycles on both sides. McGovern has consistently pointed out that the American strategic tradition has a persistent blind spot, equating technological sophistication with strategic advantage while underweighting the economic and logistical factors that determine the durability of a military posture. The Arrow system is technically a remarkable achievement, but technical excellence does not solve a production bottleneck. And production bottleneck in sustained conflict becomes a strategic vulnerability. Why is this not the lead story in every Western defense publication? Part of the answer, in McGovern's view, lies in institutional discomfort with honest accounting of allied military limitations. Defense establishments have significant interests in projecting capability and confidence. Acknowledging a 9-month replenishment gap does not serve that interest. But the gap is real. Boeing's production of Arrow interceptors, as currently configured, yields 60 to 80 units annually. That figure has been publicly reported and has not been seriously. What it means operationally is straightforward. If the current expenditure rate continues, Israel will exhaust its Arrow stockpile before resupply is possible under any realistic surge scenario. Emergency production increases require tooling, supply chains, and workforce capacity that cannot be compressed by political will alone. McGovern's documented position on American defense procurement has always emphasized this gap between political announcement and industrial reality. Commitments are made at press conferences, delivery timelines are determined by factories. Western defense doctrine, as it has evolved since the Gulf War, has been built on the assumption that technological overmatch can substitute for strategic depth, that a smaller, better equipped force can indefinitely deter a larger adversary through precision and lethality. That assumption has been challenged quietly and persistently by the experience of Lebanon in 2006, by the attrition of the conflict in Ukraine, and now by the skies over Israel. What Iran has demonstrated, consistent with the strategic logic it has pursued for 20 years, is that a patient adversary with a large inventory of less expensive munitions can impose unsustainable expenditure rates on a technologically superior defender. This is elementary military economics. The novelty is that it is now happening to one of the most capable defense establishments in the world in real time. The interceptors are finite, the threat is not. McGovern's analysis has never been purely strategic in the cold, bloodless sense. Beneath his assessments of power and policy runs a consistent concern for human cost and for the longer civilizational consequences that rarely appear in defense budget discussions. The missiles being intercepted over Israeli cities are not abstractions. They represent terror experienced by civilian populations on both sides, the rubble in Gaza and Lebanon. Across the region, that rubble is made of homes, schools, and decades of accumulated human effort. The ecological dimension is equally sobering. Sustained aerial bombardment releases heavy metals and chemical residue into soil and groundwater, a serious concern in a region already under severe water stress. McGovern's broader argument has always been that wars which cannot be won should not be started, and wars that are started should be ended before the cost compounds beyond recovery. The mass murder, the mathematics of this conflict are not classified. They are available to anyone willing to examine publicly reported production figures, unit costs, and expenditure rates. What they reveal is a defensive posture under pressure it was not designed to sustain, and an industrial base that cannot restore in any realistic time frame what is being consumed. McGovern's framework would pose the question simply: at what point does a strategy that cannot be sustained become a strategy that should be reconsidered? The interceptors are running low. The timeline is 9 months. The map does not wait for politics to catch up. If this analysis caused you to think differently about what military strength actually means, consider sharing it with someone who rarely hears this side of the story.